Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Oscar Sports and Robbie Vino from WagerTalk.com. Guys, we're talking 3:30 Eastern kick here on ABC Saturday in the ACC. The Miami Hurricanes hosting the UNC Tar Heels. Jeff, coming to you first. We got Miami minus 3-point home favorites in Hard Rock Stadium. Looks like a total of 68 now. Heavy money towards the over. What are you thinking here as the Tar Heels visit South Florida?
Yeah, it's an interesting game, Drew. You look at first at the team's motivation, that angle, and it's a concern because neither one of these teams is in contention for the ACC championship game. However, there's a really significant revenge angle, and I know revenge is oftentimes overplayed in college football and the NFL, but if you remember last year, North Carolina scored on their final drive of the game to beat Miami 28-25. And I assure you that head coach Manny Diaz has circled this game. And in fact, he mentioned in the paper a couple days ago, he said, quote, "Remember the game a year ago left a bad taste in our mouth. Our players will be highly motivated, make no doubt about that." So I think Miami is going to be very motivated for this game. I think the play is really to lay the points with the Hurricanes. You look at the Tar Heels, they come off a 49-9 win against Western Carolina, and Sam Howell, he threw 2 more touchdowns. He's doing the second most TD passes in program history for the Tar Heels. But you look at the Tar Heels, they've failed to cover the Vegas number in 4 straight games after a win. Their offense, prolific, we all know that about the Tar Heels. They're 5th in the nation in yards per game, 12th in points per game. But you look at the Hurricanes. Here's the big thing about the Hurricanes. They create havoc on the defensive side of the ball. They're ranked 8th in the nation in defensive havoc rate, and they definitely have an edge against a UNC offense that allows the 53rd highest amount of defensive havoc in the nation. You look at the Hurricanes. If you're concerned about the Hurricanes, one thing you should be concerned about is obviously December. Miami, 2-9 against the spread their last 11 in December. And 3 of Miami's last 4 wins have come by 5 points or less. So they have a tendency to play close games. This is really a game where I lean with the Miami because they're at home and they have the motivational edge here and the better defense. I would lay it with the Hurricanes if you decide to play this game.
All right, Jeff, good stuff. And it does look like pretty decent weather, maybe a little wind in South Florida. But guys, remember, we're talking on Tuesday. Weather in South Florida can change pretty rapidly. But Robbie, coming over to you here in conclusion, what are you thinking here with the Tar Heels and Canes on Saturday?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd agree with what Jeff said about the motivational angle. It doesn't come into play as much as it used to years ago, Drew. But when you get those quotes, and Jeff had a couple of them, and they had another one where Manny Diaz said UNC will have our full attention. So they've remembered it. Tight end Brevin Jordan remembers it. So this is a team that'll be motivated. But that's not to say that North Carolina won't, right? Both of these teams, for Miami, a New Year's 6 bowl game probably awaits if they finish out with a win here. For UNC, a victory over number 10 Miami could put them in that position. So I think you'll get 2 really, really motivated teams here. Just a quick look at some of the fundamentals in this game. There's some depth issues for Miami across that defensive line and inside that linebacking core. They got away with it last week against Duke. But then again, Duke doesn't have North Carolina's running game. Duke doesn't have North Carolina's quarterback. Duke doesn't have North Carolina's wide receiver, offensive line, on down the line. We can go through this. And Duke obviously contributed last week, 5 turnovers. Now they lead the nation with 35 turnovers. Just seem to do that every single week. You know, the only defense that we've seen this year outside of Syracuse in the season opener, the first 3 quarters, 4th quarter, North Carolina broke loose in that one. But the only defense we've seen stop UNC is Notre Dame. In the second half of that game. In the second half, Notre Dame allowed 58 total yards on 29 plays, forced 5 punts, and a turnover on downs. I think you got to ask yourself, is Miami's defense that good with the youth running around back there? Probably not. So I could see Carolina getting their share of points. But when you have De'Aaron King against Sam Howell, in all essence, you really have a shootout, and that's why the total has risen from 63.5 to 68. Carolina's had trouble, guys, with mobile dual-threat quarterbacks all season long. Hendon Hooker from Virginia Tech lit them up. Devin Travis, FSU, lit them up. Brennan Armstrong, UVA, lit them up. And then Ian Book had a real good game against them as well. So I could see De'Ara King having a big game here. They've got multiple weapons, just like UNC does. Number might be getting a little bit out of reach here, guys. You have to expect a 34-34 game to get to the 68, and I think it'll probably go higher. Might still be some value in playing over, but I'd get it sooner rather than later because you don't want to pick this thing up at game time when it's around 69.5.
Robbie, no, great breakdown on the total. I agree with you. I think there's still a little bit of value here on the over of 68. Of course, watch the weather like we talked about. Also, Robbie, you brought up a good point in terms of Miami still having something to play for. New Year's Six Bowl. I don't believe the Orange Bowl is a semifinal location. If not, that's likely a big candidate for him. But talking about the coaching handicap here, two guys I know you know a lot about, Manny Diaz and Mac Brown. And of course, an interesting kind of tidbit here to this game is Mac Brown fired Manny Diaz in 2013 as his defensive coordinator. Would you factor that in at all in your handicap, Robbie?
I think it could. I think the bigger matchup becomes Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator of USC, against Manny Diaz, who, while not, the defensive coordinator, is still very much hands-on with the defense. So I think Phil Longo has a lot to do with this, with that offense. Like I said before, it's been very difficult to stop, and Miami's had their struggles. We need to look no further back than the NC State game, where they were a monster favorite and got out alive with a couple of TDs in the last 5-6 minutes of that game. So their defense can struggle against potent offenses. A lot of different situational angles here, Drew. The head coaching one could be a factor, but I would think it's more Longo against that Miami defense, that youthful defense.
And you agree, Jeff, just kind of in conclusion here on any coaching handicap to this one?
I do agree with Rob made some excellent points. I think like he alluded to earlier, when you come across quotes in the papers and on TV and radio with these coaches, especially in a season like this when COVID-19 has really wreaked havoc in a lot of these programs, no one's in the stadiums and at the games. I mean, it's very difficult for these college kids to get motivated in some of these matchups. So if you have something like this where they can hang their hat on something they remember from last year, and you have the coach actually talking about it in the public, I think that speaks volumes. I think that's why that's the deciding factor for me to lean towards the Hurricanes in this game.
Yeah, towards the home favorite. And there might be, I'm just guessing here, some fans at Hard Rock, and usually it's a pretty good atmosphere, all things considered, in 2020. But great stuff from Jeff, Oskheim Sports, WagerTalk.com. Also, Robbie Vino, WagerTalk.com as well. Guys, enjoy the game. 3:30 Eastern on Saturday, Miami and UNC. Also, remember the coupon code here, guys. Daily50 takes 50% off any daily package at both websites, both Sports Memo and WagerTalk.com.